First off, since the last few times we were taping, I was using a question I referred to as being sort of rhetorical when I was saying that somebody seriously trying to pursue this should be able to turn to themselves and ask, why in the world would you put up with something that annoyed you, that was not absolutely minimally life-supporting and demanding? And I've used this as a basis for some comments for the last several nights. And it struck me that I shouldn't just leave it there, because even though I hinted, if it didn't say outright, that it was sort of rhetorical, it begs, and I'm sure was responded to by many people's nervous system, by actually attempting to, in some way, answer it. So I shouldn't leave it just hanging there, so I'll go ahead and answer it. The whole thing about why should I, by saying it to himself, why should I put up with anything that I don't truly enjoy or like if it's not absolutely necessary? And of course there is an answer, and the answer is you do it so that you'll be ordinary and live an ordinary life. Thank you, Mr. Green Jeans. I just wanted to clear that up. I guess it would be a surprise to say I was going to continue to pick up some more things from the last few times we've been taping. It's either say that or say from every time we've been taping, or else say nothing. Or say I'm going to talk about something absolutely unrelated to anything we've ever talked about before. So take your choice. But I guess you'll notice it does verbally have some connection to the last time. To wit, me attempting to get you to consider, to try and look at the possibility that criticism, one person to another, individuals, whole institutions, time periods, the criticism that one entity seems to have for another, and a type of aggression, can be seen as not simply and not truly as some form of aggression, but is an attempt for the critic, the aggressor, to compensate for the perceived flaws and that being criticized. See if you can expand it. Can you consider that criticism directed toward you, instead of all this willy-nilly speaking in a third person, criticism directed toward you is a kind of unnoticed, unrecognized detailing of life, saying what energies, what chemical combinations are presently lacking in your position that would presently complete your position. In other words, life through this kind of criticism, no matter what seems to be the external source, the internal source is life. But the criticism, in other words, is telling you what it would take to presently short you out, ground you out, presently wrap you up in the position that would be, if you could see it, pertinent to the area wherein you are being criticized, wherein you feel that you are being the subject of somebody else's aggression, or some institution's aggression, or life, or fate's aggression. If you heard any of that, I guess I'll go back in a minute and try and make sure that more of you heard it than are pretending you heard it. But those of you who heard it right now, can you see that that would be so, what it would create is life not actually wanting people to heed criticism. Which would that not, as you people like to say, explain a lot vis-a-vis the paucity of change, the infrequency of people actually taking criticism, not necessarily in a good-hearted way, but of just hearing it and then at some future date apparently responding to it. But then that is another place where the intellect makes things larger than they are, because then people criticize other people for not taking prior criticism. Not just from you. If you just meet somebody and say, well, I see that you still are drinking. And the person says, well, yeah, I guess you caught me. You say, if I recall, I was with you that time that we went to the doctor about 2 years ago. I had to take you. You were so sick. And the doctor, after talking to you and giving you tests, said it was your drinking and told you that it was going to just wipe you out, that you were not going to live long. Did he not? And your friend says, well, yeah. And so then you can criticize them for not having taken criticism. That is a secondary area, disregarding that it might have some primary effect in my example there of a person's health. But it is, again, manifestations within the singular area of human existence as apart to other creatures in the 3D area of our planet, wherein the intellect is making something bigger than it is, and it seems to be, when it's bigger than it is, an area worthy of, needing of further criticism. That is, how infrequently it is that people heed good criticism. But those of you who did hear the first part of this, in any manner, can you see that from that view, life does not want people to actually heed criticism? Because if indeed I am giving you a fair, or at least if you can hear it as being a fair and operational description of in an unknown way of how criticism works and part of its purpose, that when you are receiving criticism, it is life through mouthpieces, of course, through mouth in circuitous ways, telling you. And of course, there's got to be criticism that hackles you. If it's criticism such as, remember a skunk telling a wet otter that it stinks, or a goose, Daffy Duck telling Bugs Bunny he talks funny. If it's that kind of criticism, you're not going to notice it. But the kind of criticism, that, of course, is unfair criticism because it makes you go, what? What? If you can see that in a quite real functional sense, it is life saying indirectly to you that in your present position, I didn't want to get stuck here, it's not just you, but this is a whole other area that I should be able to drag some of you into easily some night. There's not life addressing you personally, it's life addressing your position. It's life addressing your job position. Whatever those numbers are, like the government used to use of 0.0276507, instead of that being sub-assistant vice president of janitorial affairs of a public works building not under control of the Office of Budget and Management. Instead of that being it, what it is, whatever your name is, Gottlieb Xavier Umlaut. It is life not addressing you, it's life addressing the purpose you're serving, your job description, your position. But at any rate, for the night, criticism is life telling you indirectly that in your present position, completion would be affected. Perfection for you 3D thinkers, but your present position would be completed if you acted on the criticism. But do you understand? That would put an end to whatever, in that one little area, of whatever flow of energies are going on, whatever way in life is churning things up or growing or contemplating growing and pushing forward in that area. If you indeed heeded the criticism, then whatever it was that your position was up to, such as the criticism comes to you, would not be, of course, necessarily this simple and within this kind of limited temporal frame, but the message comes to you is, dear sir, 0.057694, Gottlieb X so-and-so. Do you realize not only have you continued to drink after the doctors told you that it would be absolute murder, suicide, you have also been arrested 17 times in the last 12 months. You have lost your job. You have lost your house. Your family is now living in the streets. It is telling you, now see, look at all the things that influences. Has got your family all upset, I'm assuming. Has your wife's family upset, all of your in-laws. It's got the state, local government's involved, that somebody's having to look after your family. It's got the bank involved. They had to foreclose. In other words, you're fulfilling some kind of position by being this numbered drunk. The criticism points all this out. But if you heeded the criticism, forget any morality and actually forget health, forget the welfare of your family and all that, it's just, if you can look at this as being mathematics, it's energy balances. That if this person heeded the criticism, that the criticism says, you have ruined your life, your family is suffering from it, you've lost your house, and what it's saying is this current position seems to be flawed from a human view. And here you are still drinking. If life really wanted you, any person, to heed criticism, just as a general rule, then as soon as something that obvious was pointed out, the person would go, well, my God. You know, why didn't somebody point that out to me? Well, that's the end of that, and they'd quit drinking and immediately go and get 2 jobs and go back and get their family back and go to the bank and say, you know, give me another. You understand that whatever that purpose was being served, if you can forget the words for a minute about the man being a drunk and losing his house and all that, it's lines of energy. It is circulation within life's body that over here something was going on. It doesn't mean that the person couldn't do something else or will not do something else for life, as if you had a choice. But this particular job description, that is, this particular position in this one area of his life, which may be a large one or a small one, but of him being a drunk and everything that has, hold on California, impacted. Plus hold on Funkin' Wagner. And let's hope that Noah Webster is not turning over in somebody's bed. Of course, if he's in somebody's bed, they're going to turn over. Well, think of how the man smells after being dead this number of years. But back to the subject. Can you hear me that criticism, now it varies, I'm not going to stop and go into Pogita descriptions, but it is varying in its importance vis-a-vis your position. That is, in regards to how seriously you react to the criticism, how often it seems to come about, the intensity with which you react, but all forms of criticism enough to make a person, to make you go. In other words, it's always unjust to some degree, untoward, ill-timed, repetitive, obvious. It's a form of aggression. That is, you don't have to tell me that. I knew that, or you've told me that before. It's all a form of aggression from one view. But if you want another view, all transfers of energy are a form of aggression. You don't think when you turn on your toaster and the juice runs through it that your toaster doesn't think, hey, what is this? Back off, he's up here. You think all small appliances don't look at AC current as being somewhat pushy? Like, you know, I'll brown their damn bread. You don't have to burn my ass up. Don't, you know. But if criticism, and it's a form of energy, remember, if you can do this, to forget about the apparent psychological ramifications of this, the psychological reality, which it is, but it is strictly metaphorical because the reality is behind the words of it. But if you can see criticism as being a form of energy, it is announcing continually at individual junctures, places where people are fulfilling a position, what it is saying in an unrecognized manner, that if this were not true, which appears to be a flaw, that if this criticism we just sent, which is potential energy, or it's a note that here's energy lacking in your present position to fulfill what that position would be from a 3D view, the criticism is saying that if you did that, then the position you're in right now, the function you're fulfilling, would cease. That is, once the toast is brown, the bread is brown, it automatically pops it up and cuts the current off, right? And so therefore, from the toaster's view, this aggression of the AC current is stopped. That the job is completed. This position of toasting bread to a number 3 degree is fulfilled, and phew. So it's back to being what? Unconscious, out of action, non-operational. It's just sitting there. In that same way, sort of. If people immediately took all forms of criticism that annoyed you, which means they were valid, forget psychological, forget personal, it means that those energies you were not transforming, transmitting, they were not inherent in your position then. That's why the criticism makes you go. So if you could take the criticism as a form of energy and go, ah, and you immediately clasp it to your little small appliance bosom, insofar as that present position, whatever it would be, you would be a cul-de-sac. You would be unoperational at the moment. You would be shut down. You would be a toaster out of action, doing nothing. You'd just be sitting there. Hence, I said, life doesn't really want people to heed criticism. Now, of course, when it does, and people will heed it, but whatever it was they're doing, that's the end of it. If somebody somewhere, the criticism says you've lost your family, you've lost your house and your job all because of drinking, and I know this sort of thing does happen. And if a guy goes, my God, you're right. No matter how ridiculous it seems, like he had 40 years, if it suddenly happens, he goes, you're right. All it is a form of dinosaurs again. Instead of worrying about what wiped out dinosaurs, life didn't need more dinosaur toast. Dinosaurs were no longer a useful end of some energy, some circulation line. In the same way that if there's one person somewhere, when it's pointed out that alcohol has made you do all these terrible things, it's caused you to be in this manner flawed, and the person goes, Jesus, you're right, and immediately quits drinking, do you understand that insofar as him being an alcoholic, that's just one term, insofar as the position he was fulfilling there, it's over, whatever it was that life wanted out of it. Now, of course, he may say he feels better, and his wife may say, I'm glad it happened. That's beneath your consideration if you come up with any kind of new intelligence. You're supposed to know that. Like children know, go to the potty. Life does not want, from a 3D view, people to heed and to act upon criticism. But notice again, maybe some of you will see it this time around, the general lack of man hearkening to criticism is itself more grist for additional criticism. One person to another, people to themselves are beating their chest, rending their hair about, I knew better. Self-criticism. It is a kind of growth in a way that's not recognized. Contraire, human intelligence at the earthbound level would say that that's one of the things making us live on the precarious edge of self-extinction. All of you know better, but it brings that up, and it will say on the basis that we know better, us as the race of man, we know our shortcomings. We know that we can't pollute. We know we've got to quit pushing each other around and being aggressive. We know all of this, and yet we will not do it. If we just work hard, if we can all pull together and straighten out all these flaws, well, what do we call it? Well, I can tell you what we'd call it if it would happen. We'd call it, bye, cut out the lights, because that's going to be the end of it. We would be dinosaurs. It would be simply that life does not have to send down some comet. It does not have to create a new ice age to wipe out dinosaurs, to wipe us out. All it is it gets through with you. That's when you would reach from a 3D level completion. That's when men would indeed, in an honest, intelligent way heed reasonable, useful criticism. And then you might be able to see if indeed in some willful way that you individually on a local level could select and really act on criticism, that you would take someone's criticism and welcome it and take it to your heart and try to act on it. You do understand you'll be playing Cleopatra and the Asp, because to take criticism and act on it would be, it's suicide. It's not self-improvement. But notice how if 20 did, if it was the only singular succession to 19, then notice how insane this is. That to be able to act on reasonable, helpful criticism would surely be the sign of an intelligent, progressive, growing person. It'd be a sign of a suicide. It's self-destruction if you could do it. One other way that you could look at this, though, if you were not ordinary, and if in some way you could find how to use this, if indeed you heard any of it, the criticism that you would normally react to as though it were a form of aggression, which you're supposed to, rather than you do that, if you individually, not generally, because it's not going to happen, but if you individually could begin to use this, no matter what it was, just somebody just points out, God, are you dumb? And you say, could you be more specific? And they say, well, I don't. And laugh through some person. Or maybe they bring in a chorus of people, and they all agree, boy, you dumb. And you think, well, could I have more specifics? And they say, none are necessary, you're just dumb. And they leave, and you're mad. Then, if you were a real explorer, if there's a chance of you getting on to some new clean building site up here, then you could do something with that. As strange and as vague as it may seem about, boy, you dumb, that doesn't tell me anything. I want to know how I'm dumb. You don't need to know how you're dumb if it makes you mad. So, if you were a real revolutionist, if you were truly involved with this kind of stuff, then you could act on that, wherein ordinary people cannot. They're not supposed to. But you could act on it, and in a sense, ground yourself out vis-a-vis whatever the position was you were serving to ordinary life, and right there, at that one point, life would be through with you. Then you could abandon it. You could leave something. Whatever the hell it was, you could walk off and leave it. Because whatever it was annoying you, or you would not be subject to any criticism. So there would be a place where it was something that seemed very important to you, very annoying to you. But if you can ground it out, then you can walk away from it individually. But it won't be on the basis of, well, I improved myself. No, you didn't. You freed yourself. You didn't improve yourself. See if you can connect the connections, connect the dots. Find the connections. This one is, I'll agree, some weeks back, but I wanted to see if you can find the connections between it and some of this. Does everybody remember that very popular ditty that I presented? Maestro. It went, only the losers mystique the war. I guess again, California would be proud of me turning mystique into a verb. It's only the losers create a mystique about the war. Everybody remembers that, whether you've got much out of it. Well, I think enough of you, I made it clear enough when I used most of you here, maybe on tape. I was pointing out in our time and place, relatively speaking, was the American Civil War. But it's true all over the world. But it's only the losers develop all these stories, the tales, and a whole mystique over the loss. Can any of you find a connection? Well, first let me point out that internally what this amounts to an individual is that you people, with ordinary people it's a waste of time to tell them, but I'm telling you it's only within you that you mutter on in the area of failures. Your failures. By your own perception. We're not talking in any way clinically or objectively. It is the losses that you believe that you have incurred in life. Your failures, your personal shortcomings. It's only those, now don't say this is obvious. I like it when I speak for you sometimes I say, well, don't say this is obvious. And some of you internally nod. It's obvious, but it's not obvious in one strange sense. You ought to realize, well, boy, is that obvious. But some of you off on your own, faster than I am talking, should think, well, in fact, it's so goddamn obvious. Why the hell hadn't I ever thought about that? You only mutter on to yourself about your failures. Nobody mutters to themselves on the basis of the Union Army If you muttering to yourself, it's always on the basis, at least metaphorically, for you people above the Mason jar Dixon line. You mutter to yourself about the Confederate cause. That is, every time you have failed. Now, what I said, the connection, it is the continuing memory that people have of their losses. Now, at the times that you apparently have prevailed, whatever it was, at the time that you apparently, for whatever reason, you'd been putting away the sauce pretty good, and suddenly a physician, your friends, your liver speaks to you in a dream, and it says, stop it, or your banker says stop it. Somebody says stop it, and you go, ah, and you stop it. I mean, you stop it. Now, the kind of thing that is somewhat alien to ordinary existence, as you should know, you not only stop it, you stop it. You know, how'd you quit? I just quit. All of it. That is, you stopped it, and you walked away, and you forgot about it. You don't ever think about it unless somebody says, here, have a drink. Well, you haven't been drinking tonight. Hey, what happened? And then you realize, oh, I forgot, I don't drink anymore. Whether you said it or not. You do not mumble about that. This is not standard operating procedure and functions for ordinary people, but enough of you have had your own taste of this to understand the victors do not create a mystique. The victors of any war do not go around talking about it. They do not put up great monuments. I know they'll put up a monument, but they don't put up monuments and then them go there all the time. They don't go there and cry and weep, and they don't sing songs about it, and they don't write books about it. The victors, they triumph, and the submissive, the losers, and they finally say, do you give up once and for all? Is this it? And they go, yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. All right, and they leave. They say, well, clean up and turn out the lights and put yourself back in order, and don't do this again. All right, and the loser go, yeah, yeah, yeah. The victors walk off and they forget about it. When you have, even at a 3D level, apparently done something, that whatever it was, I quit drinking, I quit using sugar, I quit sitting watching TV, I don't mean any of this judgmentally, just something that you have done, if you actually did it, you don't ever think about it. If you did, you didn't actually do it, if you need to look at it that way. The victors have no mystique. Can you see the connection between that and life not actually wanting people to heed criticism? That there is no such thing inherently natural within a man's own nervous system of there being a war, that the victory, the conclusion was so clear cut that there is no doubt as to the victorious camp and the losing camp. That we're looking here at Versailles, and over here was Germany all by themselves, and over here was everybody else. And the table separated them, and there was no doubt. The Germans say, yeah, we give up. You naughty, naughty Germans, you understand? We mean you got to really give up. And they say, we do. We just give up. So everybody else goes, all right, well, damn it, go home and clean up and don't do this anymore. There's got to be two distinct, identifiable camps. But, now I tell you all this internally in your own nervous system. Life is not arranged such that people's nervous system, we're talking about the high end, of course, that there are that kind of natural, ordinary, routine conclusions to internal struggles. And for me to say there's not naturally is truly an understatement. It is just not a natural occurrence. Thus, all of the dreams people have of, boy, I wish I could satisfy my mind. I wish I could improve myself. I wish I could sew up all the holes in me. I wish in some way I could patch up these flaws. There's some way it's got to be done. Death with ordinary people. The idea that ordinary people are going to, in some way, come to a meaningful conclusion in any area, and that the Treaty of Versailles be done, and out one side of the coach or the room walks the Germans. Back home, and out the other side is everybody else. They walk out and they shake hands and say, well, I hope we don't have to meet like this again. And they leave and they forget about it. There is nothing ordinarily that clear cut. If nowadays, if any of you are doubting any of this, I can use it in general or specifically with individuals, that the only way that there would be a true victory would be that you have done something. You've reached some kind of conclusion, whatever it was, and you never think about it. As proof on a general level, although it still be local, we're talking about 3D, ordinary, earthbound people. Notice, in our day and time, surely one of the most popular institutions now is support groups. Alcoholics Anonymous, Children of Alcoholics Anonymous, in-laws of children of alcoholic parents, Cross-Dressers Anonymous, Wives of Cross-Dressers Anonymous support group. The point being, a few people on tape, this is not criticism of any of these groups or of life. But you understand somebody that quit drinking and will stand up at an AA meeting and say, my name is Fred, I'm an alcoholic, but I haven't had a drink in 7 years. Fred's just as proud and everybody's applauding. Do you understand that that was not a clear-cut, that was not an allied victory? Fred may have quit drinking physically, but do you understand there was no conclusion to the battle? The Fred standing there is not the Allies that trounced the Germans. If it was indeed a clear-cut victory, and Fred turned, if he looked upon his drinking, let me make it crude since some of you are looking blank. The Fred that wanted to quit drinking turned to the Fred, the part of him that did drink, and said, by God, that's enough. We're not going to drink anymore. Do you understand? And let's say the drinking side was represented by the German army. And they go, well, he said, I'm serious now. You got to stop that. We're going to stop. I'm not going to drink anymore. And they go, well, all right, you'll see. I'm not going to drink anymore, damn it. It was not a clear-cut victory, or he would not have to go to a meeting. He would not have to go to a meeting if he didn't go there, at least to himself, and say, well, it's been 7 years since I've had a drink. All that amounts to, it's been 7 years since the German fired a shot at you. But you are still out there in the trenches. All of these countries, that is you, your nervous system, you still got some part of your resources are still out there in the trenches. And they may have been there for 7 years. It may be true. And that the drinking Germans have not fired a shot, even thrown a rock. Well, maybe a little rock. That time that you almost fell into a punch bowl when it... But it's like they hadn't fired a shot at you in 7 years, and yet you're still out there in the trenches with your loins girded, your little helmet on, waiting out there. Those of you who are interested, by the way, what I'm pointing out, if you can hear it, this is into the areas that could be of some use to some individuals here and there. But all of you, I assume though, once I point out, are aware of the fact that apparently out there in life, apparently in ordinary physical circumstances, there is a version of knowing this that permeates the general scheme of life, and it goes like this. It's life telling itself through man, but always aimed at the winners, the victors of war, continue to tell them, listen, we can't forget what happened to that war. Nobody heard that? It goes on all the time. It's going on now about Vietnam. It's going about World War II. It's normally only good for the last war because there's no sense to go past that. But it's the victors. It's history, apparently, telling the victors. Like the Allies, and here's an example now, circa 1989. Already history is now telling the general European community, let's leave out for a second Germany, about what seems to be the crumbling distinction between East and West Germany, and already talk about union. Now, life has voices coming through places called Belgium, France, Italy, Spain, England, saying, wait a minute, we can't forget what happened. with the Germans in World War II. Because notice this, we forgot after World War I what happened with the Germans, and sure enough it came along and happened again, so we can't forget. Do you understand? It's life almost trying to jog itself and reminding itself, admitting that the victors don't have to have a memory. The victors have no mystique. They wander off and they forget about it. And so every now and then it's like life has to say, hey, the victors, because the losers got a mystique. Even if you don't hear about it. It's not as common as hearing the Germans now with some kind of mystique similar to that kind of so-called Southern antebellum literary and cultural mystique after the Civil War here in America. But I assure you the Germans have some mystique about it. And you don't have to really know what the stories are. I don't either. All you got to do is have the red ass and you got a mystique. That is, be mad about it. Which all losers are always mad, and so you got a mystique there. But the winners say, all right, you give up. You give up. And they say, yeah, yeah, yeah. You give up, are you going to stop this? And they go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they say, all right, now go home and don't do it again. The winners leave and go phew and forget about it and go on with their business. The losers go off and they don't forget. But notice then life makes the winners periodically seem to remind themselves, hey, we can't forget what happened. We can't forget the way those Germans or whoever it was. I don't even have to say I'm not picking on Germans, since most people in America, the majority are of Anglo-Saxon background. So I'm not picking on the Germans, but I'm just using a contemporary example, fairly contemporary. Is the losers don't have to have there's no sense of them, no need for them to try and encourage their memory. They don't have to write books. They don't have to remind themselves, or listen, we got to remember our glorious loss. You know, we got to teach our children how wonderfully we blew that last war. Now we just got our ass kicked from one end of Europe, from the Mediterranean to the North Sea. But periodically the winners, life seems to try to jog the winners by saying, look, we can't forget what happened. That is, you can't forget the war. It's not really over because it could happen again. The whole thing about those that don't remember history are condemned to get up and dance again. But notice, it doesn't stop things from happening. It doesn't stop what even appears to be three-dimensional repetition, but it is what I'm trying to get you to see, the kinds of things I point out to you individually that sometimes seem to escape, no offense to you individual, but escapes people's immediate reception of what I'm saying, is all of this is always reflected in some more primitive manner. But it's internally, it's for you to realize that what appears to be on every level, and everybody, if they're alive, is subject to it. You were subject to it. It was the driving force in your life before you got involved with this, assuming you are involved, was some kind of battle going on. It used to be called a battle between good and evil, and that's a battle between conscious and unconscious, a battle between humane, civilized needs and desires for personal relationship and love and fulfillment, and blah, blah, blah. But it is a struggle of the nervous system to breathe, to pump blood down to the toes and back up to the brain, to get air in, to get air out. It is some kind of struggle. It is some kind of aggression. It is simply the nature of 3D existence. But then to realize there are no natural, that is, before you got involved with this, before some new building site in your own nervous system, there are no clear-cut finalities like there were in World War I and II. If anything, the general condition vis-a-vis a dreamed-of conclusion with most people would be more like the Vietnam conflict. That, America in our case is kind of left, and who knows what happened. Let's forget about it. I don't know. It wasn't all that clear-cut. But then people believe, well, something's wrong. You're supposed to. That there should be some sort of clear victory. It doesn't count if you just, as bad as I drink, and as much as they scared me, it's not going to count. The doctors already told me when they said, you got to quit drinking, you're going to die. I tried to bargain with him. I said, wait a minute. What if I cut it in half? And he said, no. All right, what if I cut it like, all right, I'll go this far. I'll cut out 80% of what I drink. Actually, you're going to die if you drink again. It seems that man is driven to look for some total victory somewhere. But notice it does not happen, but also notice that no one is satisfied with that. It is for the driving force that, well, it's got to be a full victory. But then also notice that after that first story, there are no full victories. And if I tried to rub ordinary intelligence, some ordinary person's intelligence in this, I might get them to see, well, yeah, you're right, but it wouldn't have served any purpose. That is, that we need support groups. You need to tell people that, all right, I failed. You need to admit your flaws to people. Areas in the universe that don't have rats do need interviewers, poll takers. You need to talk about it. You need to admit, yeah, I failed again. Or, a variation of it, if you apparently are winning, you at least need the kind of support group, the kind of ambiance that may you to go somewhere and say, well, I'm an alcoholic and I hadn't had a drink in 7 years, but you know, he's talking to other drunks, alcoholics, and saying, but you know, it's just a matter of, we could do it any time. In other words, that's not a full victory. If it was, the Allies after World War II, they didn't have to keep getting back together once a week and say, boy, did we hook those Germans? Boy, did we hook... They don't say that. They had the Germans down, the Germans, stripped naked, bent over and say, we quit. The Allies, that is, the winners, do not have to get together every week and say, we are the Allies, we are the victors, and we just want to say that we're the victors and remind each other. It does not happen. It is not native to the chemical, the energy balance of human life for that to occur. The individual possible use of that, amongst other things, is for you to realize, as much of this is about, what the native, unrecognized condition of the human nervous system, the human brain is, so that you're not disturbed by it, so that you're not walking around believing, well, I've yet to get things straight and settled in my own ordinary affairs to press on with this. You don't understand the native condition of man. There is nothing to straighten out. There is nothing to pacify. There is no possible clear-cut victory in ordinary affairs unless you've gone ahead and commit suicide. It's your business. But this side of suicide, there are no ways, there is no satisfactory conclusion to your internal war. And your internal war is not your personal war, it's everybody's war. If you're alive, you're in some kind of conflict. You are dancing correctly, you are toiling in the proper vineyard of life, but that is the native condition. And to stop there and to be concerned, as you're supposed to be if you're ordinary, but to be concerned over not only are there no clear-cut victories in my life yet, but sometimes I don't even feel like I'm upset enough about it. Okay? As that great philosopher Ronald Reagan once said, there you go. You got the ball and you're still running. If life had any occasion to notice you individually, life would say, there, you little trooper, you. You are getting one for the Gipper. You're my kind of little person, all upset and running around in circles and alive ho. You're going, yes. Outside of the normal taping, the comment was made that most of you heard, and I'll repeat for the people on tape, to the effect that if you learn something extraordinary and you do not become extraordinary, you tend to lose it. You tend to forget it. Several people wrote me a note about that. I want to know if I make some further comment. First off, the part, if you do not become extraordinary after having learned something extraordinary, that extraordinary, I hope won't come as a real disappointment. I am not inferring anything such as being able to walk on the water, fly through the air, or to raise the dead, or even to be able to speak in a coherent manner with Noah Webster, which they say was not that simple affair even when he was viable. Let me tell you what the extraordinary is in this case. That is, if you learn something extraordinary, then you should become extraordinary. Let me tell you what was intended by that, the degree of being extraordinary. It's simply being able to fulfill some of the related functions based on the new information. Yeah, you heard me right. That is extraordinary. All right? Withal. And withal Junior. Notice how, in the ordinary, historical, and even contemporary affairs of man, the continuing belief in secret, mystical, and astounding information. Notice when people find it, what they believed was it. Does it have mystical and astounding consequences? In other words, at the ordinary level at which life operates in ordinary people, with ordinary sight, can think about it, can apparently experience it, and they get what they consider to be some extraordinary secret information. It never has any kind of extraordinary effects. And I just told you why. You just weren't listening. It's not supposed to. Even if in some way I agreed, all right, there's somebody here that wrote this book or went over there and visited Little Rock or Kathmandu, and they found this book and they got this secret information. I know what it was. I read about it, and yes, that was indeed extraordinary information. I didn't think that an ordinary person would be able to find that. But yeah, they found it. They read it. They translate it correctly. Where's the person now? And they're back home and more or less drinking and back. Not that there's anything wrong with drinking with ordinary people, but they're back home about like they were. They may now have a book, and they've been interviewed several times. Even that which was perceived to be extraordinary information does not have extraordinary effects on people. So for me to say that if you learn something extraordinary and you do not become extraordinary, you tend to lose it. Whatever the effect was, whatever the power was, has a specific inclination to take a hike. And the becoming extraordinary, in this case, would be this extraordinary occurrence. That you, a person, simply learn something extraordinary, and then in the area where it was pertinent, wherever that might be, sometimes operated on the basis, in light of, this new information. That is extraordinary. That is that which does not normally occur on this planet. Because if it did, you'd have another case of a temporary completion of something. In other words, the information, if it was extraordinary, would be moot. It would be useless as far as life's concerned, because all it did was temporarily shut you off. Looking at the clock. See, they want me now to time this to where it comes out, as though I couldn't do it, of course, where it comes out right on the dot. All right. See, I'll do one 7-minute paragraph, and then I'll do a 3-minute. One, I want to pick up, it doesn't necessarily even need 5 minutes worth or 7 minutes worth. But that I mentioned en passant last time we were taping, in the midst of talking about something else. Not only is everyone working for an absentee ballroom impresario, but everyone, the tall, the short, the loud, the shy, the pushy, the reticent, friends, enemies, are all working, toiling in unknown collusion with each other. It doesn't matter what other fissionable camps that you divided humanity up into, because I about covered it just by saying apparent friends and enemies, opponents, that everyone is in the employ of this same unseen, out of town, to say the least, employer. You cannot get off this planet, none of you know how. You're not going to get out of the solar system, you're not going to get out of the universe, you're not going to get out of this ballroom, you're not going to get out of the factory in which you toil. And the factory is putting out a product. From a 3D perspective, it might be a service, but even that would bedazzle ordinary intelligence too much to worry about the distinction. But this operation has a gross product or service. Everyone in the factory, everyone in the ballroom is working an unrecognized collusion. And all of you should be past the point of listening to your own intelligence, perhaps say, well, wait a minute. Some people don't. The Germans periodically have these fits, and that they're obviously not working for the common weal or for the good of all of life. All that shows is you've got about the same kind of intelligence. I started to say as the Germans, but no sense us all insulting most of ourselves. It just shows that you have no more intelligence than that which you criticize. You don't understand that. You don't know that that's so, because it's not so. If indeed something inside the factory, inside the ballroom, becomes less than effective for life's use, it hands you not a pink slip, it hands you a dinosaur slip, and you suddenly you realize I'm fossil bait, I'm fossil material. Life does not fool around. Life doesn't come down and say, well, listen, we have a program here to try and rehabilitate workers that are falling down the job. Life does not rehabilitate. There is no rehabilitation when you get around from the corner from the 3D world if you're not doing the purpose, and it won't be up to you. But if life is through with whatever purpose you're serving, if you are now a dinosaur, life doesn't have to send out for somebody to fire you. It doesn't have to call down a comet to come down here, or to spend 25 million years with some kind of new gradual ice age and slowly take you out. Life goes zip, and dinosaurs are yesterday's news. So it's not a matter that they're going to come in and rehabilitate dinosaurs and say, well, your work is not up to par, but I think we'll retrain you. Or we think, what's wrong with you dinosaurs? I think a lot of you are on drugs. Maybe if we would talk to you and get a support group going. Everybody in the factory, everybody in the ballroom is in unrecognized collusion. I just wanted to repeat it again because some of you, this is going to start sneaking up on you, is my prediction. And you're going to find that I indeed gave a fair description to say that this is staggering once you begin to see it. Not in some theoretical way, and not in some religious way or some vaguely religious or spiritual way that, well, we're all God's little children and we're all doing the best we can, even those that can't do very good. That's not true. That's your criticism. That's life in one part of its body saying to another part that your balance, your energies in the position that you are fulfilling right now, according to the perspective I have somewhere else, that is, by you, is saying that you're not up to snuff. But by saying that these people are not fulfilling their rightful function is nothing. And it is staggering to realize it's not theoretical. We're not all God's children. We're not all our brother's keeper. Oh, all right, we all are. Never mind all that. So what? Did it do you any good hearing that? No. But it is to understand that even those that at loggerheads, those apparently drooling with aggressive anticipation, one for another for their jugular veins, are in secret collusion and don't know it. I repeat, this is not really a three-dimensional statement. I know it sounds like it. But wouldn't that explain a lot? And of course, if you had at least 4D intelligence, you would have to respond, nope. That explains damn near everything. At least in the three-dimensional world. It explains everything that nobody else can explain. It explains all of that ordinary three-dimensional intelligence could never explain. And there it is that everybody is working in the same universe, the same factory. You're inside the same ballroom. You're dancing at the pleasure and for the profit. Although three-dimensional, you can't even see the profit. You can't see the service. You can't see the product going out the back door. But everybody in there is working for the same absentee. That is, you can't see him, you can't find him. But there's obviously somebody. You didn't build a ballroom. Somebody did, and somebody did for some purpose. You're just going to have to assume that it's making somebody a profit. And you don't know how. You can't figure out what's going on. But everybody there is fulfilling some purpose, even those that apparently might be hollering, to hell with ballrooms, or those that holler, profit is the enemy of human life, or that we should burn down all ballrooms. That doesn't matter what they're doing, unless they get their dinosaur slip, and that's the end of them. That means that. But there's always been that going on, and so for you to think that, well, there's proof that we're not all working for the same person. I hate to say you're hopeless. I'm just saying that. Not in anybody specifically. But if you still believe that, if you can't see that there is no way out, if you're in there and you're alive, you and any function in life's body manifesting itself through humans, even humans are hollering, to hell with the ballroom. You're still in unrecognized collusion with everybody else. What's the choice? Just stretch your little 3D intelligence for a second. I know it hurts. I'm not being sarcastic. It's almost impossible. But to ask, well, when I feel like that, or other people say to hell with life, it's got to be serving you right. Almost, there's some purpose being served with that, or they wouldn't be doing that. And that's when it begins to almost strike 3D intelligence that, no, that doesn't explain a lot. That just about explains the whole ball game. Well, I was going to give you, got it down to 90 seconds here, a post-holiday gift. Two older ones that I brought out with some separation, temporally speaking, between them. But what if, consider a weapon, it was a combination of two things that I presented you as weapons at the time. What if you combine the two? Ta-da! The first one being, you recall, the comment, which is a kind of weapon, but the comment that I have no comment at this time. What if you combine that with one that I also gave, that if you had any response to something, that your general response should be, possibly. When asked about anything, what do you believe, what will you do, what are you for, possibly. What if you combine the two? I hope there are not any children watching this tape now. If so, you should get them out of the room. If you combine this to where it was this kind of more up-to-date weapon, I have no comment at this time. But if I did, it would be possibly. It's possible.